Hello and welcome back to the She is Courageous podcast. Now, this week it's a guest week and this is a special one. So I'm going to start with the official bio and then I'm going to give a bit of context if that's all right. So I am delighted, absolutely over the moon to welcome Lin Sherlock to the She is Courageous podcast. Let me just tell you a little bit about Lin. After spending most of her career in the corporate world, Lin experienced a breakdown in 2018 that changed her world and her path. She found network marketing in October 2019 when she was at her lowest ebb, but she knew she needed to change and has since built a life that I'm reading the bio and I'm like, I want to tell you more about what I watch and what I've seen of this woman that has built a life that gives her time freedom, financial flexibility, and the mindset and personal growth she desperately needed. She is super proud, as she should be, to have helped close to 1,300 people and growing, mainly women, take charge of their lives too. Now, that's the official bio. Okay. And there's more we could tell you. I'm going to context this as well. This is a special one for me because I have actually known Lin for a long time. So Lin and I first met back in the corporate world, actually. If there's any UK listeners right now, which I know I've got a lot of people that listen in the UK, I worked for the good old Woolworths back in the day. And Lin was, I think you were the MD. You were certainly very high up in one of our supplier businesses. And you used to come in to Edgware Road, where I was one of the store managers, as the account manager for that business. And we got to know each other. And we've stayed in contact over the years. There's lots and lots to that story. But we actually reconnected, properly reconnected. I think it was the back end of 2019, early 2020, before the world went mad, wasn't it? So we'd stayed in contact through the means of Facebook and various other, joint connections. But I remember we actually met for lunch early 2020, just before we all went into lockdown, and we were both embarking on this new chapter. And of course, then we both got slammed with the pandemic, which I'm sure will come up in part of this conversation. However, here we both are 5 years later, and I want to say kudos to both of us for where we have got to. I have got to know you again, reconnected with you. I have watched your journey and in awe watched what you have created, Lin. And this just feels really special because I that's what, 25 years of knowing each other, maybe. Yeah, I think I was like not even 30 when we first met. Oh, anyway, so let's not do the numbers bit. Lin, welcome to the She is Courageous podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Now, I've shared the bio. I've just given a bit of context on how I know you. But what I would really love you to do, first and foremost, is tell your story a little bit. What I would love you to do is share with the listeners your backstory, kind of who you are, where you are, but also where you've come from and what got you to today. Over to you. Share your story.
Well, firstly, Shelley, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This has been a little dream of mine to come on here with you. And yes, we have known each other a long, long time. And I love that you've said it's 25 years. You were in your early 20s when I met you. So I think you were probably about 24, maybe 25. So
Wow. So in 25 years, I'm 50 next birthday. 50 next birthday.
yeah. So yeah. But anyway, maybe closer to 30 then, but definitely for a long, long time. So who am I? Well, as you've said, my name is Lin Sherlock, and there is so much, isn't there, in a name? Well, there certainly is. There certainly is for me, because I think that, like, my name is my identity. It's the thing that is almost like my avatar. Like when I'm Lin Sherlock, this is who I can be, because I had a very not not uncommon childhood. I come from a broken home, and I had a very difficult relationship with my birth mother. I'm very, very, very lucky to have a mum, my dad's second wife, who has always treated me like a daughter, and I've certainly always loved her like you know, I imagine you would love a mother. But my first start was quite rocky, and I think I grew up to think shrink yourself down, stay quiet, don't get noticed. And I think I carried that into my adult life, and this wanting to please everybody, to keep everybody else happy. I didn't realize how much that was having an impact on me. So I wanted to have the career. I wanted to prove that I was, you know, worthy of being loved, worthy of being you know, liked, considered, whatever. And so I got onto the corporate ladder after a little bit of a dabble in nursing. And I worked my way up through the ranks, you know, just as we all did. Like, this was how we were trained to be. Like, you know, you get a good job, you stay in there, you work your way up. Now, I didn't stay in the same company, but what I did was every time I moved a company, it was to progress up the ladder.
Absolutely.
And of course, what then happens is, before you realize it, or this certainly happened to me, I was in a position at a time in my life that was not where I wanted to be. And I suddenly realized that I had all of these things to be coping with, and I wasn't coping with them. I thought that I was outwardly coping with them. Now, when I look back, I think, you know, some of my behaviors would definitely suggest that I wasn't coping with it all. But I felt I had to keep those plates spinning. And I think that that is a feeling that so many women in particular, I'm sure men do too, but, you know, I can only speak from a female
Agree.
perspective, that when I couldn't allow the plates not to spin. So when the wheels came off, the lid flew off, because that is how it felt. You know, I had got to my late 50s. I was working 60, 70 hours a week. I was never at home. I was, you know, I had, to everybody else, the most exciting, perfect job. You know, I was buying director level. I was incredibly well paid. I traveled all over the world. My life was imploding. And I didn't know how to stop it. So when the lid literally flew off, that's when I completely lost control of my life. And as you say, back in November the 26th, 2018, I had a nervous breakdown. And that was the most frightening time of my life. When I look back now, I realize that it was such a gift. But I would hate anybody else to have to get to that point to realize that there are other options in life, you know. And as you said, you know, by October of 2019, so 11 months later, with the worst stutter, because that was the gift um that my breakdown had left me with, was this stutter. I decided to have a look at doing something for myself. I did not want to go back to corporate life, but I didn't know what to do, because I earn a really good salary, you know, and the thought of not having that income was a real big concern of mine. More so than it was for Gray, my husband. You know, whenever I say, but I was so worried because I was the main breadwinner, he's like, can you please stop saying that? Because it looks like, you know, I was incapable of earning money. And of course he does. But it wasn't about him, it was about me. And so I fell into network marketing. I'm going to be honest, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know whether I could do it or not, because just like everybody else who looks at network marketing, I had all of the same worries, all of the same concerns. but there was just something saying, but what if? But what if you can make it work? But what if it does mean you don't have to go back to corporate life? But what if this does give you what you want? And the big thing that I wanted that I didn't realize at the time was time. I wanted time back.
Okay, so firstly, Lynn, thank you for what you've just shared because you've been really vulnerable and really honest there. And I think so many people will certainly resonate with the first part of the story. Like you said, forgive me, but broken home, very common. Let's be honest, it's a very common thing. You talked about that relationship or lack of relationship with birth mother, relationship with mum, but also that piece where you said, you know what we all learned, and when you were talking, it was almost like I could hear my dad talking, because I say this all the time, my dad taught me, you work hard at school to get a good job, you go out, you get a good job with a good benefits package. Like you, I moved around a lot, and every time it was because I was trying to get up another rung on the ladder. And then I just think so many people will resonate with that line when you said, and then I realized I wasn't where I wanted to be. And that, I guess, I don't want to spend too much talking about that really hard time of your life. Because I don't think we need to. I think you are a credit to yourself in terms of where you are now. But I guess the question I wrote down, because you said also, I think I grew up thinking, you shrink yourself down. When did you realize that perhaps you'd grown up thinking that, or when did you realize that you were holding yourself back, shrinking yourself down? Is that a relatively recent revelation, or do you think you noticed that earlier on?
I think, if I'm honest, I was always aware of it in certain situations. Don't be too loud. Don't be too noisy. Don't talk too much. Don't always have to have the last word. I heard a lot of don'ts growing up. I didn't hear a lot of you can do this, get out there, take life for what it is. And it's interesting because now when I talk to my grandson, I am giving him the opposite narrative. I'm like, you can be whatever you want to be. Like, who is anybody to decide for you what your life should be? Because it's your life. And I honestly think I didn't realize that it's my life until I'd had my breakdown. I think I lived my life for other people all of my life.
And I'm going to make a really broad sweeping statement, but I think this is very generational. And I think with every generation we are now moving through, that's shifting. Because, I think in fact, and I always say this, that, our parents, the authority figures in our lives, they do the best they can with the resources they've got at that moment in time, right? And your parents, my parents, their parents, they had hard times. They genuinely thought the best they could provide for us in most instances was work hard, get a good job with a really good benefits package, and you'll be all right, love. And so I love that. I love that your awareness is helping you pass that down now. I just think that's so important. I look at my nieces and nephews and I just want to say to them, you can do anything you want to do. But I don't think that my parents not saying that meant anything other than to protect me. And actually, I feel quite, and I'm going to make a statement about my own family, I almost feel quite sad sometimes that they didn't see the situation or the opportunities that we now see and the next generations are seeing. So I just think it's really interesting. I think it's very generational, but I really hope that's shifting and changing. Look, I guess I'm absolutely keen to get to now because you are an inspiration, and I know you will feel uncomfortable with me saying that, Lin Sherlock, but I'm going to say it anyway. But let's fast forward. I think so many people will resonate with what you described in terms of 60, 70-hour weeks, working so hard for the next promotion, the next level. I remember, like, back in my 20s, I wanted to do what you were doing. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to be a buyer. I can remember you being one of the first people to say, it's really not as glamorous as it looks, Shelley. But we all think we want these things, don't we? And then we get them, and actually, we can often then discover it's not quite what we thought. And so, as you described, and I think this is really important to now as well, we look at what we think other people are doing and living and experiencing, and we think that's what we want first and foremost. So often we can then end up going for something we don't. We also got to remember we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I guess I just want to remind everybody of that, because you described there, and I know you well enough to know you will have had it seemingly all held together. But as you said, life was imploding and then the lid came off. And do you know what? I kind of, the emotion I felt in me when you said, I remember the date, like you remembered the date. That's how pivotal that moment was. But I want to say, if I can, it's a credit to you and the work that you have done on yourself to be able to say that I now see that as a gift, because I obviously know in that moment it definitely didn't feel like a gift.
Oh God, no.
So let's no, and I think, look, this this whole podcast is all about sharing with people real stories of real crap that goes down. But the most important part never being it didn't happen, let's just put it in a box over there, but how we come out the other side, and actually showing everyone that any one of us can take back control of our lives, can make the shifts and change we want to. And it's damn scary, which I can only imagine what that 11 months was like. And it takes courage to do so. So if we can go to, so where you'd got to in the story was, 11 months later, I didn't even know what network marketing was. And I guess back in 2019, I don't think network marketing had I was going to say it had the reputation I think it has now. I think more people understand network marketing now. And so there is a very different narrative. I know there can be positives and negatives, but you found network marketing. And in the last, if you could just give a little bit of context to when you found network marketing, didn't know what it was, and here you are now. Just give us a little bit of an overview of the last 5 years, what you've learned about the industry, about yourself, what you've created, because I really think people need, and I said it in the bio. So you said 1,300 and growing. You have supported, coached, worked with, brought 1,300 women into your team who are also creating the time freedom they want to. I think it's really important to share what you've done over the last 5 years, please.
Okay, thank you. So, like I say, I didn't know what I was doing. What I learned about myself is that I'm actually quite resilient and I'm quite dogmatic. And that when people say, oh, you need to be motivated, no, you don't. You can be motivated to go to the gym in the morning, but by the time you've got up and brushed your teeth, you can have talked yourself out of it. You've got to be resilient and you've got to be consistent. And I thought, well, I am resilient, I am consistent. So I have some of the qualities and the rest I can learn as I go. And I think that's the great thing about this industry is how much it teaches you. I've worked for a lot of American businesses in the past and their training's always been top notch. It doesn't touch what we get taught in network marketing. And I actually think the corporate world would do themselves and their employees, a service to bring in some of what the network marketing industry teaches you, because the biggest shift for me has been mindset. Now, I'm not going to say that I no longer worry about what people think, because I'll always worry about what people think. That's just inbred in me. But now what I try to do when people maybe throw something negative at me is I think, is this about education? And so therefore, I feel it's my duty to help educate, because the whole premise of this for me is helping other women who might be, facing what I was facing, working ridiculous hours, not getting to spend time with their family, facing an ever, distancing retirement age. And even if you get there, have you got enough retirement fund in order to be able to retire? All of those things that I think we don't get taught in school, we should be taught. that are going to impact your life. So for me, it's about helping people. And the biggest shift that you can make is in your thinking, being open minded to things and actually going out there and finding out the facts. Am I going to listen to somebody who is further on in their life, in their career, in their financial position, or whatever, than I am? Absolutely, because I want to know how they got there. Am I going to listen to Juggling Julie down the road who thinks that, working a full-time job, juggling 3 children, a husband, a house renovation, and never having enough month left at the end of the money is going to tell me what I should be doing with my life? No, I'm not. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I just mean we should really learn from the people who have walked before us, and educate the people who are not there yet, because I'm still not
I
there yet.
absolutely love that. I love I love so much of that. First of all, I think it's really important to acknowledge that, you said, do I worry about what people think? Of course I still worry about what people think. That's like human behavior. And I have to say to people, I'd be more concerned if, I don't think anyone in my world would ever say this because we keep it real in my world, right? I don't think I would gel very well with the people that go, no, I don't give a damn about what anyone says. They're either lying or they're not my people. Because actually there's a bit about, I still care about, like you just said, everything you do is about helping women. Yes, you are helping yourself. You've done so much work to help yourself, but you want to help others so that, and you said it earlier, I hope no one gets to the place that I got to. That's kind of your driving mission, right? I want to help people not be in the place I was in November 2018. I just ask, what was the reaction around you back in 2019 when you started your network marketing journey? Be that from your husband, your friends, your family? Because again, as I say, I think in 2019, there was even less understanding of the network marketing industry than there is now. And I still think there's a lot of people that don't get it. How did people react around you when you said, I'm going to give this a go?
Um, I'm going to start with Gray because I think Gray was bemused, skeptical, and worried to death because he still could see how vulnerable I was. And he was thinking, what the heck is she getting herself involved in? And
Right.
I think if he was sat here now, hopefully he'd be honest about it and say it took him time to get on board. But I think when I found it,
Yeah.
I was so sure that I could make a difference that even his skepticism didn't stop me. I think my friends thought I'd lost the
Yeah.
plot because I was basically jacking in everything I'd worked for, to earn, very little, because I did earn very little at the start compared to what I was earning. And I think, my parents were always really supportive. Like my dad still now will ask me, how many people have you got on your team now? What travel have you been booking for people? What's going on in your world? Where are you off
That's
to
it.
next? So they have been, I think, supportive, but I'm sure that they were worried at the time too. And now when I look back, I think, yeah, I do understand. I do understand that people were worried, but I also think it was probably the first time that I thought, no, I'm going to put me first. I am going to give myself some time to try this, because what is the worst that can happen? The worst that could happen was I would have to go back to a corporate job. That was the worst for me, which is
Yeah.
kind of where I was. So anything else was a bonus. Anything else was a bonus.
I I just, oh gosh, there's so many things there. I've got scribbles and words. I'm like, which way do I go first? So I love that you just said, I'm going to put me first. And I totally understand. Look, let's be fair to Gray. Of course he wanted to protect you. He'd seen what you'd just been through in
Yeah.
the previous year, right? Everything for him was about just making sure you were okay. And I guess I asked the question because I know people don't all understand the network marketing industry. I think more people do now than they did. But also, I think that whole piece around when we make big decisions, big life changing decisions, whether it's about network marketing or leaving a job, changing a job, leaving husbands, so often the people around us don't understand it. And they question us. But what they're doing is projecting their own fears, right? Or their own insecurities, or actually sometimes their own envy, because they realize that they don't have the courage to do what you're about to do, or even take the chance. I love that you're honing in on the words "what if." I wrote it down when you said it earlier, but I think something that's really important here, and I want to bring it to the network marketing industry. You have been running your business, and it is a business. Let's be really
Yeah.
clear. I think people look at network marketing and think it's a bit of a fun side, it's a hustle. You have created a very successful business. You do it very mission led. It's absolutely about helping women. But you have been consistent for 5 years. Can I just tell you something I remembered when you were talking? Right. So not the last time I saw you, because I've seen you since, but we reconnected and we met beginning of 2020. We were both in very different positions. I'd just left my corporate role. You'd been through what you'd been through. You'd just found network marketing. The day that we went for lunch, you said, well, guess where I'm going next after lunch, Shelley? I am going for my first Instagram lesson. And you were working with someone to learn about Instagram. Now, there's two things about that. First of all, link in show notes, go check Lynn out because she is the Instagram queen. But second of all, like from the off, you absolutely embraced the opportunity to start learning new things. And so much so, a lot of my work, and I'm sure you've got all kinds of age ranges, but a lot of the women that are in my world are like you and I in our second act, our second or third chapter, whatever you want to call it, right? We're not on the other side of 40 like we once were, right? We're over here doing our thing. And we can have this narrative of, it's too late. I'm too old to make those changes, to learn this kind of stuff. I definitely don't have that narrative, even though I might sometimes have a small voice. You 100% do not have that narrative. And I think that's really important to share. You have learned so many new skills and shown like this whole, can't teach an old dog new tricks, BS. And if anyone is proof of that, this lady I'm talking to right now is so sorry. I just had that reminder of actually you going and learning about Instagram.
And I would
Um,
like to add something to that, because I think a lot of people come into network marketing with an employee mentality and not a business owner mentality. So I've watched my husband build his business, right? Gray is an electrician, a really, really good electrician. But he goes on courses, he upskills himself all the time, he buys the best tools for his job to be the best that he can be. You can't start something and not invest in yourself. Now, for me, that investment is things like learning how to upskill myself on, social media, on AI, on, mindset, whatever. It's being part of communities where like the She's Courageous, where I'm learning something. I'm learning not just from you, but from the other amazing women that are part of it, because we all have different backgrounds. We all have different businesses. And it's actually about upskilling yourself so that you can be the best you can possibly be in your business. Otherwise, how do you move forward all the time? Because there is that saying, you only know what you know. And you've got to go out there and find out what you don't know and make it part of your repertoire.
and I think you're so right. I think so many people in business do this, particularly, and it comes back to we were taught how to go and get a job. We were taught how to be employees, and so many people come into entrepreneur, self-employed, start their own business, network marketing, whatever it is. It's a very different mindset. It's a very different behavior. It's a very different approach running your own business. And I think one of the things that was really important, and I think this is important to every business owner who might be in their first stages, but I really want to shout it out for network marketing. I think this is my view, so you can absolutely tell me if you disagree, but I think sometimes people see in the network marketing world some of the really successful people because they're all over the socials. And then one of the challenges is they jump in because they think it's a get rich quick scheme. Now, you said actually, in that first year, I just saw your face. So if you're listening on the podcast, you didn't just see Lynn roll her eyes, but she did, and rightly so. But I think this happens in a lot of businesses, right? I have this conversation with business owners all the time who come to me and they're setting this, this first year goal to hit their corporate salary. I took 25 years in the corporate world to get past six figures. And to even think that I would do that in year one was only setting myself up for fail. Would have been a lovely surprise if I did. Just so we're clear, I didn't. It's the consistency, the resilience. And in network marketing, I think that narrative can be even more exacerbated, that it's a get rich quick scheme. But I don't think that comes from network marketers.
It is
So,
100% one of the biggest myths out there, is that it's a get rich quick scheme. And that is because people are drawn to watching people on social media who talk about the big money all the time. Okay. Like you, it took me a long time until I was probably in my late 40s before I was earning six figures. Okay, so it took me all of my career to get there. I started in network marketing in 2019. It took me 5 years to get to six figures. Okay, 5 years. I would take 5 years again versus 30 years, 40 years of working for somebody to
100%.
get there. But it
Yeah.
takes resilience, it takes time, it takes commitment, it takes effort. And that is the thing I think a lot of people miss about this business. It's an effort based business. So when people say to me, oh, but it's only the people at the top that make the money. No, it's the people that work that make the money. It's the people that actually do the work. They make the
Mhm.
money. But if you look at corporate life, who makes the most money? The person at the top. Network marketing
Most of the time.
is the opposite of that. You choose where you sit, on the structure. You don't have to wait for somebody to decide whether you're going to have a pay rise, whether you're going to be promoted above somebody else or whatever. You decide that. I decide. So there are people that were in this business a long time before I came in that I have far surpassed financially. But there are people that came in after me that have far surpassed me. And that is because it's about the efforts, the time, the effort that you put in to building a business. And that's it, in a nutshell.
So let's, and I love that you've just been really honest about that. Like, 5 years to get to the, and I know you are in a place now where you are really, you have a good business out of that and you deserve it because I know how much effort's gone in. But I think it's really important to share honestly as well. Like, and yeah, you just said there are some people that are going even faster. Any business can be tough, right? It's challenging. It's a tough environment right now. I don't go in for the worries me, the economy shit and all that. I just don't go in for that. Okay. But I will not deny that we're living in tough times. This is, the world's hard work right now, quite frankly. And I'm not doing that in a negative way. Here's my question for you. How do you keep, and you used that word motivated earlier on, so I'm really conscious. I don't want to use it, but I don't have another one. Because actually, you said, you can be motivated to go to the gym and then talk yourself out of it. I think you're right. Motivation isn't the right word. It's not about how do you motivate yourself, because I believe action motivates you. But I guess my question for you is, on the tough days, when it's not going as well as you want to, how do you keep going? Because it's an effort based business. So, how do you keep the effort going?
Discipline. It's discipline, pure and simple.
And where does that come from? Where do you think your discipline comes from?
It comes from my desire to prove myself right, to prove that I have got as much opportunity and ability as anybody else to be successful in this business if I focus and I'm disciplined and I stay consistent. And so, even on the bad days, I am there working on my business, helping my team. We work with the best product in the world. I would fight anybody over that one because I sell a product that every single person uses because we all travel, whether that.
So I just realized we haven't actually made that clear to the listeners. So we have had another network marketing guest on the podcast, Lauren Derrick.
Yeah,
I'll put a link to that in the show notes because there's lots of routes in network marketing. I'm very familiar with the model. Lynn works in the travel industry, so you have two routes. Of course, you are a travel agent,
yep,
yeah, and or you help people create their own travel
yep,
agency businesses and build their teams if they would like to. So as you quite rightly say, and of course, Lynn, I mean, you were always going to be in travel, right? I mean, you always loved traveling. You just didn't get to get the best out of
yeah.
it in the work that you did, right?
True, true. But who doesn't love to
Yeah.
travel? Even if it's just a cheeky weekend away or, going to the theatre and, going up to London to watch a show or whatever. We all like to have those experiences in life. And I think because life, you're talking about how tough life is at the moment. Life is tough. It's cyclical, isn't it? We go through these periods of time. And
Yes.
I think that's when my product actually comes even more into the fore because when everybody is working like dogs and never spending quality time with their loved ones, the one time that you do is when you can get away on your holiday, whether that's, a cottage in Cornwall or, it's an all-inclusive in the Canaries or whatever. Having that time to connect is so important. And I think travel, and it's really interesting when you look at the research and stuff, is not seen as a luxury. It's not seen as an indulgence. It's not like, well, I'm going to have less haircuts or I'm going to color my hair less or, I'm going to have, I'm going to spend less on clothes or whatever. People will still travel, even if they spend a little bit less on their travel, although research is not showing that that is the case at all. And certainly, our numbers just continue to rise and rise and rise. And not only in terms of what we're selling, but the countries that we're operating in. And we're coming to Dubai very soon. We're to the United Arab Emirates by the end of this year, Shelley. So it's all of these opportunities as well. So when people say to me, "Oh, but there's so many people doing it," no, there isn't. There really isn't. It's just that you're seeing a snapshot of that on social media. Social media is so clever. That algorithm shows you what it thinks you want to see. So if you start watching a couple of people, suddenly it's going to show you 50, 60, 70 people.
Of course, absolutely. And that self-fulfilling prophecy becomes, of course, then we start telling ourselves all kinds of stories about it, right? And that's the bit about just remembering what social media is. It's an incredible, like, I don't have a love-hate relationship with social media. I know many do. I don't. Actually, I have a pretty healthy relationship with it. I see it for what it is. I love it for what it is. It keeps me connected to people, but it does also play a game in the background, right? It really does.
Totally.
So I think you're absolutely right there. But yeah, and so it's interesting you say that because I know you've said well, you just shared that the business is coming to Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, and interestingly, I have had a few people connect and reach out in the last few weeks
Okay.
because, of course, now I'm based in Dubai. So don't you worry. I'm like, I'm sorry, already Lin Sherlock. Thank you, Team Lin Sherlock all the way.
And also, this is the thing that sometimes does give our industry, I don't mean the travel industry, I mean the network marketing industry, um, a bad name. Like at the moment, it was only announced at ITQ, which is our IntelliTravel Quest. IntelliTravel is the company that I work alongside on the travel agency that we're opening up in Dubai at the end of the year. But at the minute, we don't know what that looks like in terms of suppliers. We don't know what that looks like in terms of, contract, what it means for visas, the currencies, any of that. So sometimes I think we can be seen to be jumping the gun, and that's what causes the confusion. But as soon as we know, you will know. But at the moment, those people that are reaching out do not know because we don't know.
But you know what? I think I have a slightly different view on all of that anyway, in that anybody that reaches out to me in the DMs, and this is about business, right? Let's just remember, social media, and I say this all the time, I see social media for what it is, and it's a great platform. It is a free marketing tool. Use it, people. And actually, people get really frustrated about cold DMs. I only get frustrated about cold DMs if it's really clear you know nothing about me. You've not even attempted to know anything about me, and you've just jumped in with it. I've got no issue at all with people who are making the effort to build a business. None at all. And I think this is the bit about, there's a really big difference. And anybody that has a real, like, is really triggered by somebody jumping into their DMs and genuinely reaching out. So I've had reach outs who are genuinely, I see you live in Dubai. I've been watching you. I can see you love travel. Like, they've paid attention. And actually, that takes time and effort. I will respond to that and actually say thank you, because they're just building a business. And anyone that's triggered by that, I'd say, look in the mirror. What's that really bringing up for you? Because for most people, it's because we don't have the courage to do it, because we're not doing the things that we know we could do, should do, want to do to grow our own businesses. Now, cold DMs that, like, literally you've not looked at anything, you can do one, you'll get a delete. I'm not interested. I haven't got time to reply to all of those. But I just think it's really important to kind of remember that those kind of reach outs and things, I applaud that energy and that desire to move forward and build something for themselves. Isn't that what we're all just trying to do?
And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, social media is there to connect you. Okay. So we're all there
100%.
to connect. So, what I would say to anybody who is triggered, if if I were to drop into your DMs, it's because I've seen something in you. I've seen something. Either you've talked about a pain point I feel I could help you solve, or, I can see something in you that I saw in myself, that I think I could help you to have more of what you want in life. I think that's a gift, because I don't think I can help everybody. Like, there are people that I clearly can't help, and as there will be people that you clearly can't help. But if I drop into your DMs to say, listen, I've been watching you, I've been following you, I can see, that you're stressed out at work, you're really time poor or whatever, I think I might have a solution for you, would you be open to having a chat about it? And they block me. I think, wow, like, I reached out to you because I saw potential. And don't we all want people to see
Yeah.
potential in us?
Right. And I think so. It's interesting you say. I think network marketing has some of the best training in the world. I've been exposed to two or three network marketing businesses. I absolutely agree. I think it has some of the best training in the world. And one of the number one things, and I still use it to this day, and I share it with business owners myself, and I learned it really early on with a different network marketing business to yours, was detached from the outcome. The only thing, and it plays into all the work I do, right? But ultimately, the only thing that we can take responsibility for is our input. And as long as we know, every single one of us, anyone listening, this is not about network marketing. This is about life. This is about your business. This is about your relationships. This is about if you are in the network marketing industry. The only thing that you can take responsibility for and should take responsibility for is your input. What you input into that relationship, what you input into your business, what you input into your life, that's the only thing you can control. You cannot control what comes next. And that is liberating when you really embrace that, but also a very stark reminder to all of us that there's actually no point in wasting the energy on, well, why don't they get it? Why aren't they with, they're just not worth your energy.
Can I add something to that, Shelley?
No, please do.
It's a
Please.
really, really important point. And what I always say to everybody in my organization is, you should never have to persuade somebody to do something. Because if you have to persuade them, somebody else will persuade them to stop. So
Exactly. I
it
love that.
always has to be, is this the right fit? It is not going to fit everybody, but if it is the right fit for you, let me help you, because I can show you what this has given me.
100%. No one should be trying to convince anyone of
No.
anything, right? And like we all talk about, I know you said the number one thing for you is about time, but I think also we're all, I don't know, maybe it's me and my age, the older I get, the more I just don't want it to feel as hard work. Not I don't want to work hard. I've got no issue with working hard, but I don't want it to feel like hard work, and that's different. So I absolutely, I don't want to convince anyone of anything in my world. If you need convincing, then we're on the wrong page here, because I want it to be right for you, right for me, and just I love that word ease. I don't know if I'm in full flow of ease yet, but that's what I'm working for more of, more ease. I'll work all the hours as long as it's with ease, if that makes any sense. Um, so there was something you said earlier, and I wrote it down because I do really want to kind of call it out as such a powerful thing you said, and we went in a slightly different direction, but I want to just play it back to you. Because when I asked about where does that discipline come from, I don't think I've ever had anyone answer that question for me with themselves. I have heard so many people tell me about how they've learned it from a family member, a parent, and it's instilled in me. I really want to call out with a massive applause that hearing you say that discipline comes from me because I want to prove to me what I can do, what I can have. That is so powerful, and I wanted to play it back again so that everybody heard that. If you didn't hear that earlier, go back and listen to it. That is what you said. That's what we should all be aiming for, in my view. So, with that, I'm going to ask you one final question, and that is really simply to anybody that's listening right now. We've given lots and lots of insight into the network marketing world. We've given a bit of an insight into your story and the shifts, the changes, the decisions you've made to get to where you are now. And the absolute discipline and effort is a credit to you, and you deserve every piece of success you've got now. Now, of course, I want to kind of ask what's next for Lynn, but I actually want to ask you, if you could give one piece of advice to the listeners right now, what would it be?